We're going to finish our Saturday here at Brands Hatch with the 310R category. Now this is of course the cars that are just slightly more horsepower than their predecessors. The rear lights have gone as well, which just gives you a little bit more weight saving. So it's obviously going to be a 30-minute race as well. So this is going to be the longest of our Caterham races. Let's have a word with the pole sitter, Andy Leese. Andy, very interesting battle ahead of us and a great pole position from qualifying.
Yeah, this circuit, there's no respite at all. It's 30 minutes of pure battling and mentally exhausting every single time.
Now obviously the close nature of the drivers in qualifying as well. I mean, you guys are searching for hundredths and thousandths of a second, never mind tenths of a second. Where are you able to find that around the Indy circuit?
It's typically 30s and exit of clearways. So they're the 2 points.
Now obviously racecraft is really, really critical here, but obviously tyre management as well. If you overheat the tyres, you're obviously going to really struggle for grip. Yeah. So where do you find that little bit of extra tenacity within yourself to look after those tyres?
You've got to be really careful at Graham Hill. That's where you overcook them. And then you've got sort of track limits there and very easy to pick up penalties. So you've got to be very careful there. But the rest of the time it's just drive. Unfortunately, you've got to drive aggressively, but try and keep temperatures down. Luckily, I don't think we're going to suffer with temperatures today.
I was just going to say the same thing. Good luck with it, Andy. Hopefully it's a successful one. So very, very tricky. And obviously with the dropping in temperature, it's not just going to drop the air temperature, it's also going to drop the track temperature as well. Could get greasy through the race as well. Let's have a word with Harry Cook. Preparation for his race start. Harry, second on the grid. Pretty decent place to be, but there's only one place forward you can go from there. How are you going to make it up against Andy Leese?
I think the start is going to be a crucial part, but then I think it's a 30-minute race, so it's not done in the first corner, as everyone knows. And then I think there's going to be a big pack fighting, so it's basically just don't make a mistake and stay in the fight to the final few minutes, really.
Now, obviously, the slipstreaming is quite an important part of it, but trying to get yourself into a position to make sure that you don't overheat the tyres is quite an important factor in it too. So, do you find yourself having to pace yourself, or is it a 30-minute thrash all the way through?
Well, it depends on your position. If you've fallen back, you have to get back up. But if you find yourself in sort of the top three, you can sort of relax and save your tyres for that last little stint of the race.
Interesting stuff. If it starts to change in terms of weather, do you still think that there's going to be a chance for you to be on the top step?
Yeah, I love the weather, so hopefully it does rain. Be good.
Okay, well, we'll try and bring it on for you. Good luck.
Thanks.
Fascinating how some drivers really like the challenge of the rain here. Others are always a little bit more cautious. Well, let's see if we've got some quick time to have a word with Pete Walters. He's starting from third position on the grid for this one, just as a few more raindrops start to come. Pete, the timing of this isn't particularly interesting. We've got a couple of raindrops coming. Are you up for it?
More than up for it, but it's the same for everyone. I'm pretty sure everyone's probably gone for dry, so if the rain comes, we'll all have to deal with it in the same way.
So how big an issue is there in terms of the setup of the cars between dry and wet conditions? How much are you actually changing to get the car to do what you want?
If it's the two extremes, if it's sopping wet when you go out, you're wet tyres, wet pressures, no bars, softer car, really easy decision. Today's been a really awkward day because everything's been stuck in the middle. It wasn't going to be wet, then it's going to be wet, it's going to be a little bit wet, it's just starting to rain. There is no perfect setup for this because what's quick in the wet might be quick in the dry, and it might be dry for most of it.
Got to keep your wits about you in the gaggle of drivers as well. How excited are you for this one? And it's 30 minutes as well.
Yeah, always. I mean, they're a good bunch of lads. It's great to race with them. So, yeah, keen to get going again.
Exciting stuff. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Obviously, with this being Brands Hatch Indy as well, it's never, ever going to relent. And now the rain is really starting to come. Scott, just in time for the last battle out there. This one could be the longest rain shower we've had for a while as well. It's later in the day, and this is definitely going to be a tall order for the drivers. Back to you.
Thank you, Jake. Yes, again, you can see those black clouds overhead certainly are working their, certainly doing their thing in terms of trying to saturate the track even more. We've had several rain bursts. I think we're about to get possibly our final one that's going to add one last little element into the mix with this one. It should be quite an interesting race all round. So, getting set for our final race, it is the today, which is the first race of two for the weekend for the Bilstein Caterham 310R Championship, and we come into this with a fight on our hands at the moment for the championship, with Pete Walters on overall points ahead by nearly 20 from Harry Cook in second place and then James Wingfield in third, and all three of them are in the top 5 positions as we see another Spitfire doing a flyby. to have heroes in the air and heroes trackside as well, of course, with our fantastic marshals. But quite a nice sight. Impressive to see you still flying, particularly towards that black cloud. I'd be quite nervous myself, but kudos to anyone who can fly a plane like that. And of course, those guys will be trying, whilst there's that guy's flying in the air, our drivers will be trying to be flying as fast as possible on track to go for the victory. But as I can see on the camera, it's starting to rain a bit more intensely, and there's plenty of spots of rain coming up. I can see even a bit of camera cleaning going on. But as the Spitfire flies high over Brands Hatch, we get set for our own little duel down on the ground between our Bilstein Caterham 7-310R drivers. So with the points, it's 167 that have gone the way so far overall of Pete Walters. Then it's Harry Cook on 148, James Wingfield on 145, Andrew Murgatroyd is on 137, and then Doug Christie's on 113. Right at the top 5. All the top 5 are, of course, here on track. Here on track this weekend. And of course, you've got to watch out for the likes of Andy Lees, who has thrown himself into pole position. And of course, they've got Mike Evans, who's making a reappearance once again in 4th place. I can definitely tell you that outside is absolutely bucket down with rain. So this really should be quite an interesting final race here this afternoon. These cars, of course, are the final evolution of the Caterham Academy cars. You can see now just how intense the rain is getting here at Brands Hatch. This should make it for a very, very interesting this could make the circuit pretty wet pretty quickly as the cars now just heading out onto the circuit, and they're doing so just as the rain starts to get to its most intense, or at least start to intensify even further. So lining up on the grid, we see Andy Lees, who will be starting from pole position. Andy Lees 8th in points, but he's got a best result so far this year of 2nd at the first round at Donington Park. He'll start on pole position. Alongside him is Harry Cook, who of course 2nd in points and already doesn't have a win to his name just yet, but we're looking to try and improve on that. As you can see, the rain really is belting down now here at Brands Hatch. I think they're definitely going to need, if they did probably didn't need it already, they're probably definitely going to need possibly a second formation. That you can see how hard the rain is becoming. We had rain like this back at for one of the last sort of BRCC based live streams. We see some camera cleaning going on there. We had a quite heavy rain shower, which not only caught out the end of the BMW Compact Cup race, but we also had it delayed the start of the STXR Challenge race, not just because of the weather, but also one or two cars which had gone off on the two formation laps of the grid, having the extra one because of the difference in conditions. But the rate in which the rain is coming down quite heavily suggests that these track conditions are going to change and get more and more adverse pretty much, not just by a lap, but probably by the corner. So that's one thing to watch out for. But we're going to press on with the race start regardless. So we'll go through the back of this, go through the rest of the grid. We've had the front row of Andy Lees and Harry Cook. Next is Pete Walters and Mike Evans on the second row of the grid, followed by James Wingfield and Andrew Murgatroyd on row 3. And Lewis Thompson, who didn't do the first round at Donington, where he missed the first 3 races, but ever since then has been the man to beat. He has won all 4 of the last 4 races, both at Knockhill and then both at Silverstone. So he has been absolutely on fire in terms of pace. Not so much in the qualifying this morning. He has to start from 7th on this race alongside Douglas Christie. And then we've got Harry Landy and Chris Welch rounding out the top 10 from David Yates and Jeff Price. Then Lars Hoffman, who's way down in 13th place, not a place he expected to be, nor did I either. And then Gary Curtis and Stephen Metcalf round out the 15 car grid that we have, as some of these guys are trying to get some heat into their tyres by just drifting their cars on the exit of the corners. It's quite fun to watch these cars as they slip and slither around. But nonetheless, it should be quite a decent way to round things off. We've had plenty of action both in drizzly conditions, in dry conditions. We haven't had a full wet race yet today. So we'll wait and see what this race, but you can see already that the amount of rain that we've just had, there is already a little bit of spray coming off the back of the cars. It's faint, but it's there on the circuit, so that will certainly make it very interesting. And some drivers probably would have gone for that fully dry setup, or probably somewhere in between, but it's either fully dry or fully wet. It does look as though, incredibly, that rain shower has now passed. The weather in this country is absolutely incredible. That big rain shower, and all of a sudden, as it has really stopped, I'm seeing now, looking out my window, it's just completely, I can see just large parts of blue sky. So I imagine that the rain, I would have thought, possibly would stay away unless the next set of cloud moves across and also has another rain burst as well. So, Andy Lees then is on pole position. He is in another golf coloured car, what is a very, very light blue and orange car on pole position. The black car on the front row of the grid alongside him is Harry Cook. The other black car just behind on the second row of the grid on the left is Pete Walters. We'll give you the grid once again now. So Andy Lees and Harry Cook, or we were going to anyway. Pete Walters and Mike Evans on the second row of the grid, followed by James Wingfield and Andrew Murgatroyd. James Wingfield is the red car in 5th position on the grid, the red and yellow machine. Andrew Murgatroyd is blue and yellow. We've then got Lewis Thompson, Douglas Christie, and then the rest of the grid as well with Landy and Chris Welch. That's the top 10. The race is about to get underway here at Brands Hatch for the final race today. They slip and slither away from the grid. It's a strong start from Andy Lees, but a decent start also for points leaders to Pete Walters, who pulls level with Harry Cook off the start. Decent start also for James Wingfield. He pulls level with Mike Evans into Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, but it's Andy Lees who does indeed lead it then. Second place for Harry Cook. Third for Pete Walters. They're all pretty much in grid order as they come up towards turn 1. Sailing down the outside looks to be, I think that is Lewis Thompson. Yes, it is. Thompson gets past Murgatroyd and Wingfield. He's going to go for Mike Evans on the outside here, which he's going to do. Ooh, gets edged out onto the curb by Mike. He wasn't going to let him through that easy. He goes up into 5th position and makes it happen. Oh, and there's contact in the rear. That's David Yates has gone around and very close there. That was almost a contact there from Gary Curtis, I think. So he managed to get away from that pretty much unscathed. But David Yates, I'm afraid, he's going to have to get going from the back of the field. He's got work to do in his next half hour. Out of Clark curve, that was brave stuff. Must have been terrifying stuff for James. As now Lewis heads into Paddock Hill Bend in front of him, still chasing after Mike Evans. But I think it is now still Andy Lees that leads it off the end of the first lap. Walters in second, Cook third, and Mike Evans is currently fourth. But for how much longer? Because here comes Lewis Thompson up the inside. He goes. On the outside line, you've usually got better grip, but not this occasion for Lewis Thompson. He slots back into fourth, and already he's challenging Harry Cook. He's not wasting any time, is he? He knows he wants to get his 5th win of the season. Murgatroyd, meanwhile, behind Wingfield, he's all over the place, and he's a little sideways there, just having a great scrap. I think that was with possibly Stephen Metcalf. No, sorry, Harry Landy he was battling with there. Harry Landy in the green Caterham. So they're all over each other there. There's Lees, Walters, Cook, Thompson, Mike Evans in the green and red machine. Then it's blue and yellow for Andrew Murgatroyd. All sorts going on. There's Hoffman. Forget the wet line, he says. I'm going past all of you. Or at least that's what he thinks, because he tries to get back on the power and it doesn't really work. He loses out to Murgatroyd and to Wingfield, and also to the cars that are charging along behind him. End of lap 2. Lees, Walters and Cook is the top 3, with Thompson 4th, Evans 5th, and it's Murgatroyd, Wingfield, Douglas Christie in 7th, Landy 8th, Price, Hoffman's up to 8th place. He's got a slightly dodgy transponder. As for 3rd place, here goes Thompson up the inside into Druids, and Cook will hold on the outside line, but he might have to capitulate as he slithers wide on the exit of the corner, and up into another place goes Lewis Thompson. Remember, he started 7th, so Lewis Thompson driving it to the front. He wants that 5th win in a row and of the season. David Yates, ironically, on his own, has set the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 5.912. He's half a second away from, like, just the background there has just got past Gary Curtis, so he was half a second away from him. He's that quick, he's just managed to get past him at Graham Hill Bend. See them all taking that wide line to Brands Hatch. Just in case those are wondering why they're taking the wide line, why they're not tight to the apex of the corner. The reason is because that's where all the grip is in any partially wet conditions. They call it the wet line or even the karting line. So rather than going on line where all the rubber would normally be, when the rubber gets wet due to rain or any kind of slippery fluid or substance, it causes it to become very slippery itself. So water with rubber makes it very, very low grip. So in order in the wet conditions, or any relative wet conditions, you stay off the racing line as much as possible in order to find the parts of the circuit you can ironically get more grip. Less rubber in a wet circuit on parts of the circuit means you have more grip for it. And as we watch on with the leaders, I think Pete Walters is really having a... But no, in fact, there's been a change. Second place is now Lewis Thompson, and so quick is he, he's already challenging Andy Lees. And he only took 3rd place at the end of that before, so he's quickly snapped up Walters, and Andy Lees goes around in front of the pack. Leader Andy Lees has a complete 360 and just about catches it. He's going to have to wait for everyone else to get back through. That's a disaster for Andy Lees. As he stalled the car, can he get it going again? Andy Lees throws away the lead. He gets it restarted once more, and Lewis Thompson from 7th on the grid leads the race already. It's taken him not even 4.5 minutes to go from 7th to the lead in these adverse conditions. Incredible stuff from Lewis Thompson. Brilliant driving out there. So, the chase is on for second now. Harry Cook ahead of Pete Walters, ahead of Mike Evans. James Wingfield is now 5th. As for Andy Lees, poor Andy's been dropped down to 13th. He's still got plenty of time to try and get back up there, but he's got some work to do, as does also David Yates. He's behind David Yates now, so that's one more place gained for David. Scrap on for second place, as around the outside looks Pete Walters, but Harry Cook will have the inside line. But will he have the traction off the corner? There's Harry Landy scrapping away with Douglas Christie in the black and gold kind of JPS coloured machine. Change for second has been completed. Walters is now past Cook. See if he can chase after Thompson this time. Mike Evans is having a great job as well in fourth position. He's former champion in Caterhams. Last time he raced before he came back this year in 310s was in the top line championship when it was called the 420Rs, but he's now dipped back into 310s. Oh, and goodness me, Mike Evans sideways. There's either a really, really slippery patch on that run through Clark curve, or someone's possibly dropped a little bit of fluid there, extra fluid on top of it, which is ever so slippery, because that's not the first time I've seen a driver get sideways over that patch of tarmac. Exiting Clark curve, so that's interesting. One to watch out for there, but Mike Evans very lucky not to lose the back end of the car in a straight line completely. This is what makes it tricky here, because yes, the circuit it's not like fully wet, like it's not, the track's not completely saturated. It's very much in between. There are parts that are drying already, there are parts that are very slippery, and that makes it an absolute nightmare to try and judge the grip, to try and judge the setup, to try and judge the line that you need to take. It is absolutely nightmare. They either want it, as I mentioned earlier on in the stream, fully wet or fully dry, because they know exactly what direction they need to take. But as Jake was saying to some of the drivers, and the responses he was getting, there's no telling just exactly what way you need to go until it almost gets too late in terms of what you need to do. And you almost spend the entire race with the conditions changing, wondering where the grip is, where you need to go, which way you need to go on the setup, how you need to drive the tyres. Do you ever heat them on some of the dry parts of the circuit? Are you not using up too much? Are you losing temperature on the colder parts where it's slightly more damp? It's a tricky situation. Chase Wingfield was just all arms and elbows there, trying to hold on to the car, as Lewis Thompson is driving like he's done this for years, and he pretty much has the last couple of seasons. He did have a first win denied at Spa a couple of years ago, but he managed to put that right last year with a victory, and since then he's been able to. He's been a bit of a sensation. Missed the first rounds at Donington Park, but ever since then has won every single race to date, and just proving to everyone exactly what he can do. Change on between, that's Douglas Christie and Harry Landy. Landy in the green Caterham slots through, there he goes. Just a few cars in front, still Andrew Murgatroyd battling away with James Wingfield, and they're both ahead of Lars Hoffman, who has been the champion in the past two lower steps of Caterhams, in the past 2 seasons, Road Sport and 270R, but in 310s he's just been a bit sort of further back than he'd like to be, really, which is a bit of a shame, because it seems that whether it's the upgrades or just the luck he's had or whatever it may be, just Lars is not exactly the same Lars that he was before. I mean, if we look at his results, if I go back through to the championship standings, if I can find them through my documentation, it shows that he's a little bit further back in the championship than he'd like to be. He's back down all the way in 12th position, and part of that is that I think he retired from both races at Knock Hill, so he's way down the order, and since then he didn't really recover in many cases at Silverstone, so I was probably not happy with how the car feels at the moment at this point in the season. And back down in 7th place means he's got a lot of work to do to try and get himself back up as high as he can. So here's Mike Evans going on the attack of Harry Cook, who has now lost touch with Pete Walters. Now looking at lap times, Lewis Thompson, before the lap they're about to complete, had just set the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 3.453. They come across again, and he lowers the fastest lap time once more, but it then gets beaten by Pete Walters, who was a full about 3.5 tenths quicker. So at this point in time, Pete Walters is quicker than Lewis Thompson, and we're about to get a bit of a battle on our hands here for the final race of the day. Harry Cook didn't get a great exit from Paddock Hill Bend at the compression of the hill. And that means that Mike Evans easily popped through into third place. How good would it be to him to get a podium? I mean, I think he's second or third weekend back. So he now dives into Graham Hill Bend, but he's almost all over the place. They really are struggling to find any kind of proper grip through these corners. And the sort of wiggly moment that he had there has given Harry Cook a great chance to come back into play now. Wingfield and Murgatroyd are getting into play here. Hoffman's in the background being chased down by Harry Landy. And there's still 2/3 of the race to go. We've had only, what, 9.25 minutes of this race. There's still 20 and 3/4 to go. So lots of time for Walters to catch Thompson or for Thompson to keep on pulling away. Now he's managed to get the gap back out to 2.6 towards 2 seconds, because he's managed to pull away by another 3.5 tenths or so. So 1 minute 2.982 for a personal best for Thompson compared to 103.3. And now here comes Murgatroyd having a little look up the inside of Harry Cook. Harry Cook's dropped back a couple more spots. He's lost out to James Wingfield. Now it's Murgatroyd's turn. Side by side on the exit. Now they run down towards Graham Hill Bend once more. Cook just squeezing to the edge of the circuit. So Murgatroyd says, right, I'll go to the point where there's more grip on the circuit. And he tried to get the better undercut by going wide and getting the slingshot to try and get past it. But Cook really just threw the block and parked the car right in the middle of the circuit where he didn't want it to be. Quite work out there. With Murgatroyd, you can see the way he's moving around and closing up. Just got a little bit of extra line and he can try and get through. He's trying to take that wide approach, but again, just not quite there at the moment. Back off the straight they go. Evans, meanwhile, you can see the cars, they catch that little bump as they go off Clark Curve. Just unsettles the car a little bit too much, and it can really make some really hairy moments. As Wingfield chases down Mike Evans for that final podium place. New fastest lap of the race again for Pete Walters. He's taking it back, but he's only quicker by about a few hundredths of a second. Here comes Murgatroyd. Now it's his chance to get through. Under brakes into the hairpin, and I think he has got his nose in front. And is he through on corner exit? Yes, he is. So he's up into now what is 5th position. This is the scrap for 3rd and 4th. Then 5th for Murgatroyd. There is Thompson. He continues to lead. There's Walters in 2nd place. There's some black traffic getting out of the way, so well done to them for doing so. Ooh, twitch there for Walters. You can see there, just flicked up there, that was just the hand tethers that some of these Caterham drivers have, which is to stop there in the event of, goodness forbid, any kind of accident where the car happens to go over, which hopefully it won't. Then the tethers are there to essentially keep the driver's arms within the confines of the surroundings of the roll cage, which means that they don't go flying everywhere, which is quite a handy tool to have. And so the straps are done quite tight, so you saw them sort of flapping around a bit, and that's what's helping him to get through. Is Mike Evans, who had just set the fastest lap of the race by quite a margin, at least a second, gets very wide on the exit and almost loses the back end over the curbs, and potentially puts himself under threat for 3rd place from James Wingfield now. Wingfield in the red and yellow machine just behind Mike Evans' green and red example. There goes Murgatroyd. There goes Cook. Further back, this is Lars Hoppen versus Harry Landy. Hoppen holding on in the Motul-sponsored car. And there goes Harry Landy past the lap traffic. I think that is Chris Welch. So Chris Welch is the one that's had a lap put on him, so he carries on in these traffic conditions. Here's Chris at the back of the field. You can see him, he's struggling for grip now as Lewis Thompson lowers the fastest lap time again. He's now responded, 1 minute 1.208. Oh, and that bump in the middle of the circuit, it really has a patch there that just unsettles the car a bit too much. And even Lewis Thompson had that about a lap or two ago, where he was just the car moving around on the straight. That must be a really uncomfortable feeling, particularly in this situation. Now, seeing as the sun's starting to break through again, the temperature is still about 16 degrees, I'd imagine that some of the points of the circuit that were a little more saturated towards the beginning of this race have now started to dry themselves out a bit more. And so this will be very interesting to see who's going in which direction, whether it's wet or dry setup, or trying to go somewhere in between. They come up through 30. This is still Evans versus Wingfield versus Murgatroyd now. This is over 3rd, 4th and 5th, the final podium spot. Murgatroyd, who was in contention for the Academy title in his Academy year, has been taking gentle steps up from the last couple of race meetings. As Thompson again lowers that time, so I suspect that some of the points of the circuit start to dry out a bit more. I expect that he's going to be getting the lap times are going to start tumbling now. Sub 1 minute, I imagine. 1 minute 0.5 for Lewis Thompson. This is the new fast lap of the race. Now there's Andy Lees. He's up to 12 behind David Yates. But behind him we've got, looks like that is Christie and David, I think Gary Curtis in there as well. So all sorts going on. No, that's changed around, I think. Sorry. Andy Lees has got through. It's then Jeff Price is up now to 10th position to the top 10. So good job for Jeff. 11th for Douglas Christie. 12th for David Yates. And then it's Curtis, Metcalf and Welsh running out the 15 cars that are still running. So still all 15 that started are continuing on. But Andy Lees is up to 9th now. David Yates trying to go down the outside of the curb on Douglas Christie. Didn't work the first time. But Christie then just sees David Yates' overlap. Heads up towards 30s and then in a non-conformity way, well, in quite a simple way, says, through you go. David Yates just responds with a bit of flick of the tail of oversteer, saying, thanks for that, Douglas. Now, intriguingly, what Andy Lees' lap time's like, his last lap was a 1 minute 2.386. The leaders are setting now sub 1 minute lap times. That was the fastest lap of the race last time by for Lewis Thompson, who's now finding more and more grip, and it looks like more and more dry patches on the circuit to go much faster. The gap is out to 3.2 seconds over himself and Pete Walters in second place. Mike Evans is third, James Wingfield fourth, and it's Murgatroyd, Cook, Hoffman, and then, as we say, Landy, Lees, and Price in the top 10. So Jeff Price having a strong race so far in the top 10, making his way through. There's our battle for third that continues to go. Mike Evans twitching around as he exits 30s. He's got enough pace at the moment to hold on to both James Wingfield and also Andrew Murgatroyd. Lewis Thompson again lowers the fastest lap of the race. This time he now puts it down to a 59.497. Shaves another half a second off that fastest lap time. The gap is now 4.1 seconds between Thompson and Walters as Evans continues on in this third place. It's a bit of a stalemate at the moment between Evans, Wingfield and Murgatroyd. So, down towards there is Lewis Thompson.
Second position.
And Pete Walters is further back than that. I think that's Chris Welch battling. I think that's with Metcalf in the 16. So, further back here as we turn out of Clark Curve, back onto the straight. And 13 minutes still to go in this final race. And this is very much a race where Lewis Thompson is controlling the pace straight from the front. He drops his pace a tiny bit to a 1 minute 0.0. Walters does a 59.7 for a personal best. Mike Evans puts the fastest lap of the race in now, 59.4. And everyone in the rest of the top 5 behind Thompson did a sub 1 minute lap time. So Thompson, I think, is possibly just doing enough, I reckon, at this point, to just have enough of a gap to just maintain the pace. And even if they do start to close in, only doing so by about roughly a tenth and a bit per lap, which seems to be working out nicely. Just looking at the gaps. Okay, so there is, that's Mike Evans trying to put a lap on Chris Welch, which he does, but the momentum that Wingfield carried off the corner sees him shoot onto the rear end of Evans' car, and that really doesn't work out for Mike all that well, so he's now under threat, and again moving around on the damp patches of the circuit, catching one and just sliding around a little bit too much. He's now going to try and put a lap on the back mark here if he can. I think that's Metcalf. He's going to try and put a lap on again. Thompson puts another new fastest lap of the race in 59.1. And the gap is back. No, it gets taken back again by only a 100th of a second by Walters. Meanwhile, for third place, looking down the outside is James Wingfield on Evans. Evans looks to try and fight back. And now they come back up the hill again. Still third, fourth and fifth as they were. Murgatroyd just keeping a watching brief as they turn in through Druids. He's keeping it tight. David Yates now throws in the fastest lap of the race. A 58.875. He is motoring along at the moment. And ironically, he's behind Andy Lees, who Lees, of course, had that spin and was 1 point behind David after David had his own contact and spin on the opening lap. Lees is doing a 1 minute 0.3. He is lapping at least a second quicker than the cars in front of him, which is the likes of Harry Landy and also as well Harry Cook. Harry Cook really has dropped off in pace and not really the pace that he should be setting. He wants to keep himself second in the championship. So drop scores might save him, but yeah, not really. This first race, particularly with the mixed conditions, just might not be playing to his driving style or preferred setup. Whereas if it's either fully wet or fully dry, I'm sure he'll cope much better tomorrow, given what the conditions might or might not be. Fastest lap of the race lowers yet again, 58.5 this time. It's now gone to Thompson once more. So he steals it back. 4.6 seconds is the margin now between Thompson and Walters, but still this battle of the third continues. Mike Evans from James Wingfield. James made quite a large leap. He did the academy. I think he went straight into either 270s or 310Rs. Well, that step, he completely missed the road sport step, and I think also maybe 310s as well. So this is the scrap that's been going on between the two cars that are recovering after their earlier mishaps. We've got David Yates and Andy Lees, and then just further back from them, just in front of them, we've got, I think that's Harry Cook, that's Harry Landy, that's Yates and Lees, and there was Jeff Price behind them. Andy Lees hasn't learned from his spinner from the lead in the early stage. He's still getting over the curves and getting very sideways. Wingfield now takes his turn for the fastest lap of the race. He puts in a 57.952, but you can probably expect that Lewis Thompson will find enough grip and enough pace in these ever-improving conditions, and he'll improve on that even further. He's now going to lower it. He's now going to go even quicker now because David Yates puts in a 57.7. So it's a bit like they've just like a bit of a qualifying session in some cases, with drivers just trying to duke it out to see who can get the best fastest lap of the race so far. David Yates has pulled away now from Andy Lees. His next target for David will be for David that of Harry Landy. There he is, and again, just so much quicker on the exit the corner and tears his way past. And as you would expect, Lewis Thompson once again pinches the fastest lap, 57, but it gets stolen back again by Pete Walters. So Thompson always sets kind of the next first benchmark for the next fastest, proper fastest time, and then someone else always goes and beats it. So it's pretty much a battle between Lewis Thompson and everyone else to get the fastest lap of the race, because every time someone else takes it back from Thompson, he puts in another lap, which gives it back to him, and then he loses it back again, gains it back again, and it goes. It's like a tennis match going back and forth between the two of them with this fastest lap of the race. Just over 8.5 minutes to go in this final race of the day, this 310R race, and change for third place. James Wingfield is up to third now, past Mike Evans, and fifth place for Andrew Murgatroyd. He's going to try and make it fourth if he can. Has a little look, peeks out. Has small thought about taking fourth from Mike, but I'm not quite sure he was truly ready for that just yet. Gap is still 4.7 seconds as yet again Lewis Thompson takes the fast lap of the race, and again Pete Walters beats it. He now dips under 57 seconds, 56.9. So, but again, even though Pete Walters is lapping quicker than Thompson, it's not by much. It's about roughly a tenth and a half each time. And with under 8 minutes to go now, that's nowhere near going to be enough for him to catch him. Thompson looks as though he's got quite a comfortable margin at the moment to hold on to this one and again take his fifth win in the season. David Yates thinks, right, my hat's still in the ring here too, guys. I can still lap as quick as anyone else. 56.6 for him. So another new target for Thompson to beat on this ever drying and improving track. Murgatroyd there in fifth position has a look. He's going to try and pick up the inside. He, again, really did think about it, but backed out at the last minute and allowed Evans to continue on. Now is Thompson going to take another new fast lap of the race and come through any second now? And of course he does. 56.124 to get it even faster. What about Walters? Not this time. 56.2, but he's on roughly the same pace. So it's looking good. There's Jeff Price in the top 10, or just outside the top 10. He is currently 11th. And I think just behind him, putting a lap on that, is that Lewis Thompson, is that Pete Walters? That is... Oh, it's Douglas Christie. Douglas Christie with Gary Curtis is behind him. So Douglas Christie's trying to recover from 12th, but there is Jeff. The pit straight goes Price, chased down by Doug Christie. Last time by, Doug was about 3/10 quicker, so this gap between them is about 0.8 of a second as Chris Welch tries to hold around the outside of Doug Christie, but Doug was having absolutely none of it, and so Chris Welch sits back and continues on his own race. Lewis Thompson, as you'd expect, new fastest lap of the race yet again, 55.821 this time, average speed of nearly 78 miles an hour, and again 55.9. So whatever Thompson does, Walters can either slightly better or just about match in terms of gap by about a tenth or so. I thought I heard the siren going, so we had a car in pit lane, but it might just be possibly a car that's returning back to the paddock. Harry Cook has put a 55.3 in, so now that it's dried up a bit more, Harry Cook has decided to suddenly wake up in this race and decided to get himself into the mix. He's currently sitting 7th. He's got a 2 seconds gap to make up if he can on Lars Hoffman, who was about 7/10 slower. And as they come back through again, we've now got Thompson be coming through in a moment now to see if he can take another new fastest lap of the race. Should be taking bets on if he does the fastest lap each time. Which he does again, 55.337. This time now 78.58 miles per hour average speed. Walters again in the 55s, but it's a 55.6. He lost 3/10, so his gap is almost 5 seconds now, with 5 1/4 still to go. Harry Cook now betters it. He's done a 54.766. So Hoffman to Cook then has substantially lowered the gap to Hoffman, whose last lap was, what was that? That was 55.5, so 8/10 of a second between Hoffman and Cook. As we see, here's Thompson continuing on at the front and pretty much controlling this race and the pace. And you can see pretty much on the timing screen, it is effectively green times all around, apart from a couple of the drivers. Pretty much everyone is improving out there, with the track getting quicker and quicker. And now this time by, interestingly, Thompson doesn't set a new fastest lap of the race. There's a 58.8 for 0, 55.6 for Walters. The gap still goes out to 5.5, so the advantage still with car 79. And as the sun starts to hang a little bit lower and the shadows start to get a little bit longer in this rather mixed weather summer Saturday in early August, Thompson puts a lap on. I think that's possibly Metcalf who's put a lap on there, if not Gary Curtis. Still Walters in 2nd place. There's your fight for 3rd. That's Wingfield still 3rd with Evans and Murgatroyd. That's stabilised a bit. And it's Hoffman and Cook. And they're only a second apart. I think that was them pretty much in the same shot just behind this trio. Battling over P6 and P7. Thompson crosses the line and does another personal best, but again, not near Cook's fastest lap of 54.7. And Cook is lapping at that pace pretty consistently, and Hoffman's also on that pace too, 54.9, as is Evans, 54.9 as well for him. And Cook just comes along and smashes that with a 54.2. So it really is getting quicker out there as we head towards the end of the day. The temperature's still 16 degrees or so. As Thompson turns in through Surtees. There goes Walters. Here's our fight for 3rd in the background. Where's Hoffman? There's Hoffman. And there is Harry Cook behind him. So the pace that Harry's setting is roughly the sort of same as Lars Hoffman in front. It's the pace that Cook is setting is roughly the same as Hoffman's. Just keeping with him as best he can in these closing stages. There goes Pete Walters putting a lap on the 16 of Metcalf. He lost 1.3 seconds on that. It was 7.1. The gap is now, well, Cook's got past Hoffman, and whilst he was doing it, sets another new fast lap of the race. He's punching into the 53s now, 53.7 for Harry Cook. He is by far and away the fastest man on track at the moment. He was a full nearly 2 seconds quicker, for example, than Lewis Thompson. Now, it's 16 seconds at the moment. I can't see him catching, but is there a possibility? He's not that far away. It's 1 minute 53 to go. Well, lap is at roughly, that's interesting. He might get maybe 2 more laps, I think. Depends on how quickly they can get around. So Thompson has gone through, does a 54.8. But he's almost a second off the pace at the moment for the fastest drivers in the field. Here goes Harry Cook. Now what's his time this time by? He does a 53.6. It's another new fastest lap of the race for Harry. So closing that gap, it's down to 2 seconds between himself and Andrew Murgatroyd. He's got pretty much, I think, yes, 2 laps. I think he maybe have maybe 3 more, but 2 more laps, I think, including this one they're on. So 2 more laps to find at least another 2 seconds and to maybe sneak into a top 5 place. He's not that far away. There is Harry. Let's see if he can do it. There's the targets in front. He won't. I don't think he won't pass Wingfield or Evans. I don't believe he won't get that close that quickly. Thompson, meanwhile, will go on to the final lap of the race with another new personal best. So this time by will be the final lap of the day and of the race in this Caterham 7.310R race. It's been quite a long one, 30 minutes, which I think the weather's played a factor. It might not have been as close in some battles as the others, but it certainly has been an interesting battle of back and forth lap times here. Harry Cook takes another new fastest lap of the race yet again, 53.5, and I'm pretty sure he will keep on pushing right until the end. So as he heads into Druids, still chasing these cars that are scrapping over third. Down the hill goes up at third, but this man pretty much, there is no stopping him at the moment. He was dominant at Knockhill and took both wins. He was dominant at Silverstone and took both wins, and he's starting Brands Hatch as he means to continue. It is an unprecedented 5 victories on the bounce for Lewis Thompson, who wins the first Caterham 7.310R race of the weekend. Plenty of scrapping going on behind. It will be Pete Walters who will come across the line for second place. For third, fourth, fifth and sixth it will be Wingfield, Evans, Murgatroyd, and Harry Cook did get close in the end. Doesn't beat his fastest lap time on that last lap, but he does pick up 6th ahead of Lars Hoffman in 7th place. David Yates from his earlier spin will pick up 8th for his efforts. That will certainly be comfort for him. 9th will be Andy Lees, who will be kicking himself after that spin on the opening couple of laps. And will have to fight back to have to settle with 9th place after his fight back. Harry Landy in 10th. But there is a rather pleased 10th winner in Lewis Thompson. Grand stuff from him in the mix. And the signals to the marshals, of course, have been wonderful all day. I know it's been in some for them maybe a tricky Saturday, given what looms over them from the past 7 days. But it's one thing that's clear is that we really do appreciate them and everything they do. So thank you ever so much to all the marshals who've been absolutely wonderful today. Both in the tribute and also around the circuit today, and the hard work of the recovery teams, all the volunteers. Thank you ever so much, because you are very much appreciated and you are the best in the world. So, final race result to bring up on screen, hopefully. Here we go. Lewis Thompson takes the victory by almost 10 seconds in the end from Pete Walters. James Wingfield 3rd, Mike Evans 4th, and Andrew Murgatroyd 5th, whilst the rapid Harry Cook is one to watch out for tomorrow if it's dry, 6th with the fastest lap of the race. Hoffman 7th. Then it's David Yates in 8th, Andy Lees 9th, and Harry Landy in P10, with Jeff Price 11th, Douglas Christie in 12th, Gary Curtis 13th, and Stephen Metcalf and Chris Welch rounding out the top 15.